we were looking at the type of chances that Pukki was getting and thinking, we create a lot of them chances. So if he can make the similar type of runs here, and we can continue creating them chances, the stats are telling us it's going to work in simple terms. I saw something in the media, BBC gossip column, which I'm sure you will look at first thing in the morning. It's the first thing you do. You don't say hello to the wife, you go, hang on. Is that right or what?
I look sometimes.
Ruby folded up the agent, Stu.
But no, on that, Jack Grealish was linked with Man United for £75 million. Well, if that's the benchmark, what's Todd done different to Jack Grealish?
So that's the price.
Say that again.
Jack Grealish's agent on here, is it? I didn't know that. He's actually done an independent test with our doctor, which has come back negative.
Wow.
Which is confusing. So now he's got to have a third test to see if that comes back negative.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to yet again another episode of the Beautiful Game podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Budge. Before I introduce my faithful co-conspirators, just a reminder that you can watch our content via our visual platform in YouTube, and you can listen to our content via our audio platform in Spotify. Now, of course, I'm joined by Dot and Dej. Gents, how are we doing?
Yo, Budge, I'm all right. How are you?
Very, very good indeed, man. How about you, Dej? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm blessed. Happy that Prem's finally upon us. Like, we've been waiting for so long.
Finally. Long wait. It feels like an age has passed, honestly, since we've seen the last Premier League game. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you guys are as well. And let it commence, man. As always, we're joined also by a very, very special guest indeed. And this gentleman's reputation precedes him for being a man with an eye for talent, a keen attention to detail, and getting very, very shrewd business over the line. I liken him to Geppetto of Pinocchio. He's behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. Without further ado, we welcome the sporting director of Norwich Football Club, Stuart Webber, to the platform. Welcome, Stuart.
Welcome, Stuart.
Thank you, yeah. How are you doing?
Stuart. We're very well, thanks. You know, it's crazy because I've been like a massive admirer of your work, and what you're doing at Norwich is amazing, Stu.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. No, listen, it's an honour to be here. It's great, the work you're doing. I've listened to the Brendan Rodgers one and Michael Beale so far. So yeah, you know, you're doing some good work. I think it's great what you're doing is trying to dig a little bit deeper than the normal. You know, and I've liked the way you certainly with Michael and with Brendan, how you spoke to them about their careers and how they've got there, because they've probably come through similar journeys to myself, i.e. not being, you know, maybe blessed with a fantastic footballing career. So I think, no, it's really good what you're doing, and anything I can do to help, it's an honour.
Thank you very much.
No, we appreciate
that, Stuart. And of course, you know, given the fact that Project Restart, we know that you're a busy guy. So you taking this time out to have a chat with us is really, really appreciated.
My pleasure.
Where we wanted to start, Stuart, is your role in layman's terms. And the reason why it's important for us to sort of deep dive into what you do on a day-to-day basis is because, you know, we have spoken to Les Ferdinand recently, who's obviously at QPR, and you guys are in similar roles. But your roles have so many different definitions. So you've done clubs, a sporting director, somewhere else, a director of football, head of recruitment. And so, you know, fans can very easily be confused by these different terms and these different titles. So I guess in layman's terms, could you just explain what your role entails and what you do on a day-to-day basis in your role?
Yeah, I think, as you say, the roles in this country especially slightly different for each club. You know, every club has their own sort of take on it, and I think it's still relatively new in our country, maybe compared to what it's been, you know, on the continent. But, you know, effectively, my job is to sort of look after, lead the sort of medium and long-term sort of football strategy for the club. So, you know, I report directly to the board. You know, and the key areas I oversee is obviously, you know, the head coach, recruitment, sports science and medical, the academy, and also the head of comms here, actually, the media sort of department, because that's a big part of setting the narrative and sort of stuff like that. So it's over them departments, but if I'm honest, the sort of roles effectively is how you're deemed is, in my opinion, as if you're a success in this role, is how good the players are that you sign, how good the business is you do, players in and out, and how good you are at a point in the right head coach. And I think if you get them three factors right, you can be a real success in the role. Whereas if I'm outstanding at sports science but terrible at recruitment of coaches or players, then to be honest, I probably would fail in the role. I think it's there's lots of factors to the role, such as sports science and et cetera, but fundamentally it's about getting them key decisions right on with the coach, recruitment of the players, when to trade, when not to trade, how do you get value, how do you succession plan your squad, how do you make a plan for the young players, how does that plan get executed, how do you create the culture and environment which makes it safe to play young players and to develop players where every sort of staff member feels invested in that. So I would say they're the sort of the key sort of day-to-day parts of my role. And at times it's tough to balance because, I get as caught up on a match as anyone else because it means so much, when you see how hard the staff and the players work. Of course, on a Saturday afternoon, you want them to get the rewards for that. But sometimes you have to step back from that as well and look at the bigger picture. And that's a massive part of my role is keeping the board and people calm and keep people on the plan, because if we go off the plan too much and too often, then you start making changes too often, and then you change how you do things, and then it ends up going wrong. Whereas I think success, in my opinion, in football can only be built in the medium term if you have a plan, you stick to it, you develop it, and you're constantly trying to make what you're doing better, as opposed to getting too caught up in just what happens on a Saturday afternoon. Because let's be honest, you can lose a game of football by a referee doing you, by a human being making a mistake, because that's what players are, they're humans. And you can lose by bad luck, and likewise you can win on all of them ways, and I remember the start of the season we got promoted, for example, we lost 3 of the first 5 games, and Bolton, I think, won 3 of the first 5, and we won the league and they finished bottom. And but if you remember, if you watch them games, the games they won, in my opinion, very fortunate to win. The games we lost, some of our best performances that season came in them games that we lost, So I think it's about understanding at that time that it's a process, and you've got to stick with people, and you've got to see it through if you truly believe in it.
Yeah, so Stuart, on our show, we like to, go through the careers of our interviewees, and you've had a very unorthodox career so far, starting at Wrexham under Dean Saunders, working as part of the ground staff. So if you could just take us back to those days and how it was as a youngster, forging a career in the game.
Yeah, so like a lot of young people, I sort of left school, had no real direction or knowing what I wanted to do, and the only thing I knew I loved was football. But unfortunately, I wasn't good enough to play it, at a high level. So I made a real early decision when I was 16 as to, okay, I want to try and get involved in the game in a different way. And so I started embarking on my coaching badges, because I was like, okay, I'll give that a go. Academically, I was poor in school. Later found out I was dyslexic, which I don't think helped my ability in school. But so I decided to do my coaching badges, and then what I did, I lived in a small town in mid Wales called Aberystwyth, and that's where I was from. And I left there, moved up to North Wales, and actually went to a college and started studying horticulture. Not because I wanted to be a gardener or grounds or whatever, but I needed to do something, and I needed to try and pick a trade or whatever whilst working on coaching and behind the scenes. And then I was really lucky. I got offered a job. I'd done some work experience at Wrexham on the pitches, cutting the pitches and stuff. And the guy who was doing it left, so they offered me the job full time. So I went there full time, and it's brilliant because I'd go in early in the morning, cut the pitches, make them all look great, mark them, et cetera, and then stand back and watch the first team train. And at the time it was under Dean's, not Dean Saunders, it was Dennis Smith to start with in League One. And he'd let me watch training, and he'd managed 1,000 games, You know, and we had some good players. We had people like Carlos Edwards, who went on to play for Sunderland in the Premier League, Dennis Lawrence, who went to Swansea, Darren Ferguson, was Peter Bramanza now, was in midfield. So good players, you know. So you know, Chris Armstrong came, actually, if you remember him from memories at Tottenham. And he started at Wrexham as a kid, funnily enough, but Palace and then Tottenham, and then came at the end of his career back to Wrexham. And you know, so you know, I was watching, you know, good players, good level, sort of training every day, and then they'd finish and I'd go on the pitch and fix them. And then after a couple of months, I think I'd done up to whatever, my B license or something, and I said to the academy manager, I said, listen, I said, can I come and do some coaching in the academy? Because at that time I was coaching of an evening in like junior teams. You know, I was doing girls teams, I was doing disabled teams, I was doing anything I could do. I'd just go out and coach for no money, but just to get the experience and to learn about, you know, how to teach people, because I needed the experience. And then I said to the academy manager at Wrexham at the time, what Centre Excellence, what it was back then, I said, you know, any chance I could coach a team here? So I don't want paying, no interest, but I said, you know, I want to work with that. And he said, yeah, no problem. Come for 6 months, do the under-12s. And they used to, I realise now why I got given that team. They used to train always at 9 o'clock, no, 7:30 on a Friday night. So no one else wanted to do it. So at first I was like, oh, that's just because I'm doing this team. And then after about 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm now locking up. So it's the easy way so everyone could go home on a Friday night. And but it's brilliant because I had my own team and they were good players. You know, we had a player called Elliot Hewitt played in that team. He went on to play for, I think, Ipswich when they were in the Championship. You know, but that's some good players. And it was a great level, and I loved it. It was brilliant. You know, having my own team at that level of players. And then the head of youth at the time was a guy called Steve Cooper. He left to join to Liverpool as coaching role he had there. He's obviously the Swansea manager now. I got made head of youth then at Wrexham when I was young. I was like 22 or something, and then I was coaching the under-18s and overseeing the youth there, which was brilliant because I literally did every job, you know, from coaching the under-18s and taking them, working with a guy called Joey Jones who played for Liverpool in the 70s, won 2 European Cups, toughest man I've ever met. You know, to washing the kit on a Sunday morning and that. So it's like brilliant apprenticeship because you sort of literally had to do everything. And then I got offered a chance to go to Liverpool, but on the scouting side. And at first it was a job to scout like the real young players, sort of under-8s, under-9s, and I weren't overly excited about that. I was excited about Liverpool, of course, but I was like, oh, you know, I love watching the kids, and I still love coming here on a Sunday now at Norwich and watching the kids because it's just pure football. It's just they don't care, they got no worries, they're playing because they love it. But I was like, oh, I'm not sure about that. So I went and spoke to them, and we didn't agree something. And then, anyway, soon after, a couple of months later, they had a big change there, and a guy called Frank McParland went in as academy director. And he said, "Come and see me." So I went and saw him. He said, "Listen, come in, do this role for a while." He says, "I promise you, if you're any good, I'll promote you really quick." So I looked at him and thought, "Okay, no, I believe you. So let's have a go." So I went to Liverpool then in 2009, I think it was around that time. And true to his word, very quickly, he was there. Damien Kamoli came in as director of football, and they promoted me to, I had some sexy title, director of academy recruitment or something. And it was brilliant. But within 6 months, I got promoted to that. And that was brilliant because suddenly then I was traveling all around the world. I went to Vietnam, I went to China. I was constantly in Europe. I remember 1 month I only slept on my own bed 3 nights. Because I was in Europe, not with women. I was working. Unfortunately, great story, but it was work, I'm afraid. But it's brilliant because, you know, I was watching the best players in the world at 14, 15, 16, 17, and it was amazing. And I had some incredible experiences. And then 3 years later, Damien left. And Brendan Rodgers came in. It was at the sort of the change after Kenny was manager, and at that point I knew I wanted to work in the first team, and that would have happened under Damien, I think, and Kenny, and the guys came in. It was Dave Fallows, Michael Edwards, and Barry Hunter, and they said, "Oh, listen, you know, we'd love you to stay." And I'm like, "Well, I want to go work at first team level," and at that time there was no role there. So I said, "Listen, I'm gonna leave because, you know, I want to go and work at first team level now. I feel like I'm ready to take that step." And that's when I went to QPR, who were in the Premier League at the time. It was Mark Hughes was manager, Mike Rigg was director of football, and that was a tough experience of first team football. That was really hard because it was we didn't win any games. It was a crazy sort of period. It wasn't what I expected. It wanted, but was a magnificent experience, and I look back on with some regrets, but also quite fondly of I learned so much in that time because of how hard it was. And then Mark Hughes got sacked in the December, and I got offered a job at Wolves to go in as head of recruitment, and I actually took a pay cut to go there because it was like, I need to get out of QPR. This is, without being rude, it's a mess. It wasn't what I expected. And it's a shame as well because the owner, a guy called Tony Fernandez, was a really good guy. He had great intentions, but it wasn't for me. So I left, went to Wolves, and we got relegated that season. So it was like QPR got relegated from the Premier League and Wolves got relegated from the Championship. That was my first season of senior football. So I'm thinking, maybe this isn't for me. Get back on the phone to Liverpool, see if they want me, but they didn't. but no, I stayed at Wolves, and we got promoted the next season from League One with record points, which is great, and brilliant to have that experience. And then the next season in the Championship, we actually finished 7th, level on points with 5th and 6th. So we missed out on the playoffs. And it was at the end of that season I got a call from Huddersfield to go and talk to them about going in as head of football operations, which is sporting director really, but just a different title.
Stuart, can I just interject very quickly? I just want to quickly go back to your time at Liverpool, because I think, in my opinion, that was a very important and poignant moment in your journey to date. And obviously you got brought in 2009, I think, and Rafa Benitez was the manager. But going to Liverpool, did that expand your football knowledge because you were working with staff that were multicultural? You had Rafa Benitez, you had, Rodolfo Borrell, you had so many people.
Pep Segura.
Yeah. You had so many people that knew the game inside out. Do you think that almost broadened your horizon on the way you look at the game today?
Yeah, 100%. You've mentioned one of the guys there, a guy called Pep Segura, and probably, if I'm honest, until I'd met him or worked with him, he made me feel so inadequate, not in a bad way, and so like I had no knowledge at all.
Wow.
Because he had so much knowledge. And I remember I'd drive home from that academy feeling like, I'm not good enough to work here. I'm miles off where this guy is in terms of his knowledge. And but it was frightening, but it was an incredible experience with him and the staff there every day, because we had Rodolfo Borrell, like you said, Mike Marsh, who played 100 games for Liverpool and is now Swansea assistant manager. Steve Cooper was there. Unbelievable experience. We had like head physio was a guy called Dave Galley, who'd worked with England and stuff. So it's just everywhere you looked was like top class people. And I was 20, when was it, 2009? 24, 25, so I was a kid, well, I didn't feel it at the time because, you're all macho and you think you're good enough or whatever. But when I look back, I was like, wow, I knew absolutely nothing. And Pep Segura taught me so much without even knowing it. But I learned so much from him in terms of how to set up a squad, how to set up a team, the importance of repetition within your work. If you want people to become the best, you've got to practice, repetition. How they would get their ideas across tactically, even to younger kids. So we were going through the phase then. I don't know if you guys remember, but everything was just let them play, let the kids play. He was like, no, you don't do that. And then you'd watch how he would work, and then you'd watch Barcelona overnight on TV, and you'd go, oh yeah, that's what he's creating here. And he was. Or he is a genius, and funnily enough, I met him before COVID. I went and had dinner with him out in Barcelona because I wanted to pick his brain on a couple of things that I was having challenges with that I needed a different sort of perspective on. And he's outstanding. But I learned so much in that period because, it was the first time I'd been exposed to like world-class staff. Damien Comolli is director of football. He'd obviously been at Arsenal, Tottenham, spoke 4 languages or whatever, and just the expertise of these people was off the scale. I came from Wrexham thinking I knew it all, like we all do when you're young. I think we all do that, right? Interestingly, I thought Brendan Rodgers said it well on the bit he did review about Liverpool. He said, "Yeah, I was 40 then. I'm a different guy now. And and that's someone who's 40, so not, he's young in a manager's term, but it's still pretty experienced. And I think, you have to live through that, though, of where you think you know it all and you get a few slaps and then you work out you don't know it all. And then hindsight is brilliant to think back on. But yeah, no, them guys were brilliant. And then also the level of player, we signed Raheem Sterling, Jordan Ibe, Shea Ojo, we had Conor Cody in the building, Jack Robinson in the building. So good players, top players. Watching them work every day, was just different. When Andre Wisdom was playing, they're fantastic players. We've gone on to have great careers, and you're seeing them work every day and how they do it, and you learn off them. Even though some of them were 15, 16, I'd learn from them watching them, going, oh yeah, look how professional these guys are. Even though he's 15 or 16, still in school.
Yes. So another name we mentioned in passing was Michael Edwards. He's seen right now as, one of the greats of what he does. People mention him in the same terms as Chicky Berikstein, Mladen Sormaz at Leicester as well. When you met him, could you tell that, this guy had something special in terms of combining that data analysis with watching players? Because when you look at Liverpool's recruitment recently, you can count, on one finger, the sort of, the number of failed signings that they've made. So could you tell at that point that this guy was heading to the top?
To be honest, no. But I thought it was intriguing because for me, it was my first real exposure to data. It's probably just about being talked about in England then, and it was fascinating seeing someone who's incredibly clever academically, and was very different to anything I'd come across in football before. Let's be honest, you used to sort of meet in football people. I don't really like that term, but you know what I mean by that. He wasn't. He was different, and I was quite intrigued by it. And I think, and you'd have to ask him, but I look at his career at Liverpool where he's done, let's be honest, outrageous. But probably not at the start. Probably some of that went wrong at the start. I'm sure you could talk about Markovic, who cost £20 million. I couldn't even tell you who he's playing now. They're not all a success. And I think what I would love to ask him, or would be interested to hear, is has he also developed over 10 years to be more understanding of the human need of a player and the human need of what player fits with which coach and whatever. And I think if I look at Liverpool's recruitment respectfully as an outsider, I think they have absolutely nailed yes, but this is what the head coach will do. And if we can get part of the ingredients, he will turn him into this magnificent cake. And I think that's a bit they've got right. Whereas I think sometimes maybe before they'll have some great ingredients, but it's like, yeah, but you've got the wrong chef. So it doesn't actually matter. It's not funny, we can all be like Delia Smith. If you give us all the same ingredients, we won't make the same cake. She'll make a better one because she'll know how to put them together. Whereas you give her the rubbish ingredients, she'll make just as bad a cake as us. But it's about that. And I think it'd be an interesting question. You should get him on here and ask him that. If
are you close with him? Do you have any contact with him now? Or?
only
Thanks, Stuart.
I know where you're going.
Thanks, Stuart.
Do you know what, Stuart? I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned a little while back when you were talking about your early days in your career and having to go out and scout really, really young players. And it's something that we see across clubs now more frequently, in that, clubs are going after players a lot younger and, of course, expanding their academies. And then, there's that real emphasis on homegrown talent and nurturing those players through the academy. So when you're scouting players at that age, say when they're, primary school, secondary school and whatnot, how does that differ from scouting players who are much more experienced? What are the qualities that you look for at that age? And how does it differ from someone who's had a few years under their belt playing at the top level?
I think it's different. I think when you're looking at really, really young players, so let's say, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, you've got to remember the game changes when you get to 12 because you've suddenly got 11 aside and there's offside to deal with and the pitch is bigger and potentially an athletic profile different. You can have a fantastic player at under 9s and 10s, but then physically when he gets to a big pitch, it might be hard for him to adapt, and some never adapt to it because, if nature hasn't given them a certain athletic ability, it's very hard to become a footballer at the top level now. You know, there's not many players in the Premier League who can't run, is there? Let's be honest. So, but I think when you look at the young ones, I always used to just think you wanted them to show you some moments that they could just be different. You know, I'm really big now on players understanding the game, and I think certain players at a young age do get it quicker than others in terms of, when I say understanding the game, I don't mean being incredibly tactically disciplined, but understanding that, you know, if they're playing a 1-2, the type of movement they need to make. If they're a midfielder, checking their shoulders. You know, if they're centre backs, where their body position is, do they get side on? If they're a centre forward, the type of runs they make in the box. You know, I think you can see that instinctively with lots of young players, and you can see good habits. They don't always make the right little. You can see the ones you go, oh, you know what, you're a bright footballer. You might not know he's a bright footballer, but you can see that he gets the type of movements that he needs to make. And I like that, because in my opinion, when you get a higher level guy, when you want to become professional footballers, I think you've either got to be physically outstanding, or in my opinion, you've got to have outstanding brain stroke mindset, you know, and I think them things develop quite early, and I think it can often be missed as well. I think physically maybe not, because anyone can see someone who looks physically outstanding, but sometimes the brain's seen a player that, yeah, but you know what, he knows how to play football. You know, I find it fascinating with young players. I love watching the kids. I love coming here on a Sunday, watching the academy. I remember we got promoted last year on the Saturday night, and I got home at about midnight, I think, because it's a late kick-off, and it was brilliant. Next Sunday morning, bang in, I think we were playing Arsenal under 14s. It's brilliant. You know, we've just been promoted, but it's like, yes, I can't wait to go in. Brought my little lad to me, and you're watching them. You're watching how they develop and stuff. It's still the best thing. It's still the most pleasing thing for me in the job, is watching young players, watching the young player's journey, the struggles that he has to go through. You know, watching them mature, watching that moment that they make their debut and you know, they survive through it, and the first time they have to do an interview and stuff. I think for me, it's the best part of being involved in football is watching young people achieve their dreams. Is brilliant. You just can't beat it.
Stuart, you're, you know, one of the most highly regarded young sporting directors in football right now, and I think during your time at Huddersfield, you were the man, you know, that was integral in bringing in David Wagner. I just want to fast forward a little bit, but we're going to go back to Huddersfield. During your time at Norwich, you brought in another German, Daniel Farke, and a lot of people say, you know what you're looking for when you're looking at a manager, and you like that German sort of mentality. Hence why you brought in David Wagner and Daniel Farke. What is it about German managers that you tend to really take to?
Yeah, I love a German. But no, I think when we take it back to Huddersfield and we appointed David, I'd been entrusted in trying to find the next sort of head coach for Huddersfield, and I spoke to the owner, would you accept for him, blah blah blah. Yes, and when I did some research, I tried to look across what would fit best into the Championship as a mentality. What leagues are the closest to ours? And I kept going back to German football and English football. In my opinion, the two most comparable. You know, the second Bundesliga and the Championship, it's the two closest. And the Bundesliga and the Premier League. I think it's really hard to compare, for example, Segura in Spain and the Championship. It could be a different sport some days, or Holland, you know, it can be different. Whereas I looked at the Germans, I looked at the mentality and felt, okay, that works. Then when you then go deeper, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, they've worked so hard on their coaching sort of education, if you like. And they've turned it into, I believe, coaching into a real sort of profession. And they take it extremely serious. And to get your pro license in Germany is very, very difficult. So, you know, them as students of the game. And then you sort of see the amount who are successfully transforming from under 23 football into first team football. And it was like, okay, there's something going on out there. And that's how it came about with David, and he got recommended to us, and I went and met him, and the sort of rest is history. And then after that, we sort of set up a system to sort of scout potential future head coaches, and a system we use here as well. And Daniel was on that, and he was someone that we were constantly monitoring. So I was first speaking to Daniel when I was working at Huddersfield, just in case David left or whatever. So I think it's what I like about the Germans in particular, to go back to the question, is extremely structured, very disciplined. They've got a way of working. They're pretty stubborn with it, which I like. I like people who have a way of working, believe in it, and work on it every day, rather than, oh, right, we got beat 3-0 the weekend. Right, I'm going to rip all that up. I'm going to do this for this week. Oh, we won 2-1. Brilliant. We'll keep doing that. Oh, no, we've lost again. Now we need to try something new. I can't hack that. I can't hack the training week changes because of one result or because of emotion of, right, we've lost, right, they're all going to be in tomorrow, we're going to run them. It's like, just treat it properly. It's just, it's a process. So I like that about Germany. But what I must say is, I like Spanish coaches a lot, but there's a challenge with the language there, to be honest. They're less good at English than, say, a German is. But I also believe that English coaches are well on the way up as well. I truly believe that we are going to have a trend soon in our country, much like Germany's had, let's say, for the last 10 years. I think in 10 years, people will be talking about, the last 10 years of English coaches has been really good, because I truly believe the work that, Dan Ashworth and Gareth Southgate and these guys did at the FA, I don't think the fruits of their labour are quite through yet, but I think they're about to be picked, and I think people like Steve Cooper are hopefully sort of, the sort of start of that, of people getting that opportunity, and he's doing really well at Swansea, and sort of them growing. And I think that will give more confidence then to owners, chief execs, sporting directors, or whatever. Because I think a lot of it, guys, when you're appointing one, it's a brave decision to appoint Dave Wagner. It's a brave decision to appoint Daniel Farke, because if it goes wrong, people are queuing up to go, told you so. Like we had it here in the first year when, we finished 14th. I got so much stick of people going, yeah, you just copied what you did at Huddersfield, hoping you'd bring in the Dortmund under 23 coach and it'd work. And it was like, I have a bit more respect for my work than that. But, you've got to be brave to make these calls. A bit like giving a young player opportunity, you've got to be brave, or signing a player that no one's ever heard of. You've got to be brave. And I just hope that some of the young English coaches coming through, even, I know, okay, Lampard and Gerrard have been world-class players, so maybe it's slightly different, but hopefully they'll continue to be successful. So it will give owners maybe a bit more bravery to go, okay, maybe I won't give this job to respect. He's had 40 jobs previously. Let's give it to a young one. I think, Russell Martin, who obviously was here, was captain here, doing really good things at MK Dons. And that's obviously a club that's traditionally given so many young English coaches a chance. So I think they're there. I think we just need some success stories to give more opportunities, so that then confidence grows,
What we want to do, we want to go back to your time at Huddersfield, because for me, that was like a miracle. I remember before, obviously, David came in, Chris Powell was the manager, and obviously he was relieved of his duties. And some key acquisitions was Aramoy and Elias Kachunga. And they were very, very pivotal, in turning your fortunes around and, making sure the season came in promotion. Yeah. Dean Hoyle was the owner at the time, and he was a man that, seemed to get involved. He wanted the best for the club. So if you could explain to us briefly that turnaround, that rags to riches story from Huddersfield coming to the Premier League.
Yeah, to be honest, it was a fairy tale, to be honest. So we sacked Chris in the November and appointed David in the November, and it was that season we finished 19th in the Championship. Everyone forgets that. That season, Chris Powell still had a better points per game than David did. It's marginal, but he did. And that summer, we signed 14 new players. So we signed, for example, Danny Ward, the goalkeeper on loan from Liverpool. We signed Chris Lerver, Heffingler, Kachunga, Moy, Casey Palmer, Rajiv Van La Parra. And yeah, the turnaround was incredible. But I'll never forget, we played Liverpool in a pre-season friendly. And Trent Alexander-Arnold played. He's 17 at the time. I think it was one of his first sort of senior games, only a friendly, and it was outrageous. But anyway, Aaron Moy played, and we knew Moy was a good player. How good, if we're honest, we didn't know how good. We knew he was a good player, but I'll never forget Dean Whitehead played with him, obviously 300 odd Premier League games, etc., etc. He's come off the pitch and give it like the old puff of the cheeks and was like, I'm telling you, he is a proper player. Talking about Aaron Moy. And I remember that moment I spoke to David after the game and said, that is something when another player who's talking about a player who could probably will take his place in the team has just gone, no, he's a proper player. And he was. And to be honest, we just hit it off. I mean, Casey Palmer, it was his first senior experience. I remember he scored his debut against Brentford, his first kick of senior football, which is brilliant. Kachunga was outstanding. I remember we played Norwich away actually on a Friday night. We beat him 2-1, and Kachunga scored 2 live on Sky. And yeah, it was brilliant. It was a fairy tale, and you know, we got everything. We got every decision right, if I'm honest, that season, in terms of pre-season tour, pre-season friendlies, who we signed. We had no injuries. You know, because what people often forget is for the first 6 months of that season, we only had Naki Wells as a striker. We had no other striker. And then in
that season was
he came in January.
Okay, yeah.
So we signed him in the January, and we signed Izzy Brown as well on loan in January from Chelsea. He spent the first half of the season at Rotherham. So we brought both of them in, and Izzy sort of played as a 10 with Casey. And then Colin was like our second choice sort of striker behind Naki, really. And yeah, but everything went which could go well. Went well. I remember we drew at Villa Park, and I think the third game we were 1-0 down. We battered them, we hit the bar, everything. Last minute, Michael Heffler, centre back, massive big centre back's gone up front. He chased the keeper down. He's hit the ball against him. It's gone in, and it's a bit like it was. If I'm honest, I'd love to say it was just brilliant work from us all, but you know, we also had some luck as well, which you need. You know, you do need. But yeah, it's a fairy tale, and it was brilliant. And for Dean, I was so happy because he's a great guy. Invested so much money in that club. So much time into the club, genuinely loved it. You know, he was a proper fan. He used to stand on the terraces when he was a kid and all that sort of stuff. And Huddersfield lad, and you know what that did for that community as well. It was beyond the football club. It regenerated a community, which war community, if I'm honest, up there. And
normally had a rugby, you know, fan base sort of thing.
Yeah, it did, yeah, because they had the like Super League rugby team there, the Giants, I think they're called, Huddersfield Giants, and. Yeah, football. I mean, I remember we had a game. We played MK Dons in the Championship the first season. We were there, one of Chris's last games. There's about 7,000 fans there. They just didn't really care. Do you know what I mean? And so yeah, no, it was a fairy tale, but it's brilliant. And you know, I think that's why we're all involved in football sometimes. Is for them moments where you see something like that happen is great, isn't it? You know, it's what it should be about. You know, it should be everyone should be able to dream a little bit, whatever club they're at, that they can achieve something pretty special.
You mentioned it in passing a little earlier when you were talking about your time at QPR working with Tony Fernandez. And of course, it was a whirlwind of a season. You know, there were a lot of comings and goings at the club. I think in total there were 18 players that were signed over that season, and 25 in total that went out on either out on loan or were sold. Some more notable names are Christopher Samba, who was widely reported came in on 100 grand a week. Esteban Granero, who came in from Real Madrid. Loic Remy from Marseille. And say again?
Julio Cesar.
Oh yeah.
The goalkeeper,
yeah. There was quite a few signings there, right? And of course it didn't culminate in what the ambition of the club was. And at the end of the season, the club were relegated. And I guess if you could condense that down to just like one key takeaway for you over the time, what would you say you learned from that experience?
The importance of culture. If you don't have the right culture, you've got zero chance. And if you've got the wrong culture, because at that time, the money the club had was literally unlimited, hence all them players that you've just reeled off. But it was actually irrelevant because the culture was that bad that I think you could have plucked Messi and Ronaldo in there and it still would have gone wrong. It just wasn't right. People, in my opinion, people were going to that club for the wrong reasons. They weren't going there to play for QPR or represent that club or that part of London or whatever. They were going, and I think it showed on the pitch. You know, I think it showed badly on the pitch, unfortunately. And like I say, I look back on that time and think, if you get your culture wrong, it's how bad it can go. You know, and I remember, in fairness, you know, I was on the periphery of it really. I couldn't affect anything there, which was one of my major sort of frustrations. But I get it as well. But you know, I remember seeing those players there like Sean Derry, Clint Hill, people who got the club promoted and, you know, did care, in fairness. And, you know, they're sat in a canteen watching players turning up on 10, 15 times the amount of money that they're on. And, you know, that causes resentment, you know, and I think that's only human nature. You know, if you feel you've done brilliant for a club. And there's a massive takeaway I learned for when we got promoted here, actually, was making sure you look after the ones who've done really well for you, and done really well for your organisation. Even if maybe you'd question if some of them are going to be maybe good enough for the next level. But in terms of keeping that harmony and the culture and people who care for the club, are far more important, because then I don't think you run the risk of wrecking the club. You know, you might still get relegated, but the club's not wrecked. Whereas, you know, if you look at QPR, you know, I don't know how Les spoke about it, but I still get the feeling they're still trying to recover from that period.
Yeah,
now.
that's what he said.
That is sad. For you think of QPR as a club. I don't know how old you guys are, but, you know, they were like in the Premier League in '94 when Les Ferdinand, and remember Trevor Sinclair with that ridiculous bicycle kick and stuff. You know, they're like one of our traditional clubs, aren't they? You know, in this country, they're sort of, you know, you think, not the biggest club or whatever, we know that, but they are a proper traditional club, aren't they? And, you know, it's wrong that can happen. And the owner, you know, I look back for the owner and think, he spent so much money and had so much, he was so desperate for it to be successful, but yeah, it didn't work out, unfortunately.
So Stuart, we want to move on to, you know, the role that you're doing currently. And obviously I heard you speak earlier on in the season on Football Daily, the BBC podcast, and you were, you know, telling people that it's important for you to be seen with the manager, win, lose or draw. Why is that important to you?
I think it's important to show players, staff, supporters even, that you're together and that we're trying to be successful here, not I'm trying to be successful, or we got beat. It's more important when we lose, to be honest. That he feels that support and people see that he is getting that support. See, when you're winning, to be honest, it's far less important. You know, back end of the last season it didn't matter. But when things aren't going right, because it's only my beliefs, but I think it's really important to not show people that there's any cracks, not show people that there's any chance that, you know, we've had a couple of bad results, because, you know, we all know what football's like. You know, a few bad results and pressure comes on and people start questioning what you're doing, etc., etc. And I think I like things in the bud quickly, because I just don't think it's right. I don't like speculation around training grounds of people going, "Ooh, you know, it's like that. Ooh, I've lost a few games. You know, Stu hasn't spoken to the manager. You know, I haven't been seen together. You know."
Yeah,
so
but Stuart, can't that be like counterproductive? Because can't some players think, hold on, the technical director is always around now. I don't really get it. We're losing games. Why is he around? Does this mean the manager's getting sacked? So how do you like make sure the message is clear that you just need to spend time with him to build that chemistry with him?
Yeah, I think the being around bit's crucial. So, you know, what I must add, it doesn't mean I'm suddenly travelling on the coach to games or that's probably the moment that they'd go, that's a bit odd. I'm on about them seeing us stood together at the end of training out on the training pitch, or sat having breakfast together. You know, we would always hear pre-COVID, you know, if we're both in the training ground, we'll have breakfast together. Doesn't mean we have it every day, because some days we're not on the training ground at the same time or whatever, but just to give that. So it's not, and I think the most important thing with it, is it's consistent. So win, lose or draw, people don't see, winning every, you know, look at Stu knocking around the dressing room, or losing every week he's here. It's consistent of actually win, lose or draw. No, you'll see the same face and you'll see me doing the same actions. Of course, I might be thinking different things in my head and behind closed doors, and that's fine, because at times tough decisions have to be made or whatever. But it's not showing that to the outside. It's not letting people feel that like, is there a change imminent? Because, you know, you want people focused on the job in hand and worried about being the best they can be, not worried about, you know, politics, which sometimes, you know, get involved in was every walk of life, but certainly football.
Yeah, when you look at the players that Norwich currently possess, you know, Ben Godfrey, Jamal Lewis, Max Aarons, you know, Buendia, he's a very, very talented player. And you told the story of how he came to the club and how you were, you know, spent in the boardroom meetings trying to get that deal done. So if you could just explain to us the lengths that you went to get Buendia, because he's a talented, talented boy.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I mean, I can take no credit for finding him. That was all to the scouting department and the data guys. But I remember Kieran Scott, who's our head of recruitment, saying to me, "Listen, there's this player here in Spain. You need to look at him, but we're gonna have to be quick." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So I looked at him, and to be honest, within 3 minutes, I was like, "Okay, show me more of this guy." And then I rang an agent in Madrid who I know well and said, "Listen, there's this guy. He's on loan from Getafe, which is obviously Madrid. You know, what's the situation? Just find out the situation." And he goes, "Well, funny enough, he's actually with our partner, who's Argentina." Like, okay. And actually, Getafe are skint. They need some money, so there could be a deal here. I was like, "Oh, okay. We've got no money, so what are we going to do?" So I got on straight away to the finance director. And I said, "Listen," I rang him. I said, "I need to come and see you. I was at the training ground and I had to go to the stadium. So about 20 minutes. Are you in?" Yeah, I need to come see you. So "Don't go till I've seen you." Yeah. So anyway, I go to see him. I said, "Listen, could be an opportunity here to make some incredible business, to make some really big money in the future." I said, "But you got to give me £1.5 million now, which I know we haven't got." She said, "Oh, right, what's it for?" So I explained that. And I've gone, "The other thing, just so you know, we're going to sign him now in January, but we can't actually get him till the summer because he's locked in on a loan. So you're not even going to see him for 6 months." So luckily, trust was built up and the rapport was there, and we just sold Alex Pritchard to Huddersfield, ironically. So there was a bit of money coming in, and I'm like, "Listen, this will be Pritchard's replacement, but unfortunately not until next summer." So anyway, fair play to him. He found the money somehow, and we got the deal done. It was then a really complicated deal, to be honest. So I flew to Madrid. I remember meeting Emmy at 1 o'clock in the morning in a hotel. He couldn't speak a word of English. My Spanish wasn't particularly great, but we managed to get through it. And
Well, sign language.
yeah, exactly. You want food? We've all done it, haven't we? So yeah, he and then it was like really complicated because we had to do a pre-agreement with Getafe to give us the option to buy him in the summer. We had to do a pre-agreement with the player, etc., etc. But yeah, we did it and got great, and he's done brilliant. And it's a nice story, and it's a great story for the scouting team. Kieran Scott is head recruitment. Mariella, who sort of at the time was doing all the data for us, she actually flagged him up to us. She was sort of quite relentless on it. So I think it's, you know, great sort of kudos for them. And what it has done as well, it's built great confidence within the department. Not so much for myself, because obviously I had that, but from above that, you know, because they're like, "Wow, these guys can pluck a guy from the Spanish division who's gone on and played however many games he played last year for us in the Championship winning team and play in the Premier League." And yeah, so it shows you, you know, that there is players out there. You've got to go and find them. And again, it comes back to, I touched on earlier about being brave. About being brave enough to sign him, because Emmy, if you look at him, he's 5'7" or whatever. He's playing at the bottom of the Spanish second league. They actually got relegated, his team, that season. You know, it'd be easy to go, "Come on, he's a little midget or whatever, playing in the Spanish second league. What do you do?" That would be the easy thing to do. But fair play, the guys were brave, and we did it. And fair play then to obviously the head coach, who when he came in, he's developed and worked with him, you know, and he's developed a lot in the 2 years. 2 years, yeah.
Stuart, how difficult is it to, you know, temper expectations? Because, you know, you've said on record before that you have to be brave, because Norwich are a team that, no disrespect, are expected to finish probably 20th in the league, because you've got the lowest wage bill in the Premier League. And you were like, you know, for every Buendia, you get a Patrick Roberts, that it just doesn't work out. So how difficult is it to identify the right talent, and what sort of data do you measure when you're buying a player?
Yeah, it's really tough because, you know, let's be honest, we've all seen top players not work out at clubs where you think, they spent 30 million and he's not turned out. And you know, I always remember Juan Sebastian Veron signed for Man United, and I loved him, and like, he didn't really do it there compared to what we know his level is. And it's like, you're looking at players like that and thinking, that just doesn't make any sense. And I think that's where it is hard. It's certainly harder with the less resource you've got as well. So, you know, so like the pond that we're fishing in, you know, we haven't got the benefit of being able to spend 15, 20 million pounds on a player and get that wrong. You know, we're fishing in a different pond. So you do get ones often you get more wrong than right. And I think it's about understanding that. And I think it's it comes back to education. It's about educating the board, the people around the club, the supporters even of, listen, you're right, for every Buendia or Pukki, there is one which doesn't work out. But that's because we're signing players who are either completely young from markets that no one's ever heard of, playing at a really low level potentially, or there's something wrong with them. Maybe they've had injury histories, etc., etc. You know, we're not buying the finished product, you know. So, you know, we're here, you know, our job is, we can't buy superstars, but we can try and create them, you know, whether that's from our own academy or whether that's from scouting them. So I think it's people understanding that. And then in terms of the data, I think it's about understanding what type of player works for you. So if we know what our right back looks like, what certain things that he needs to hit from a performance point of view, again, you don't always get it right. But, you know, we knew with Emmy, for example, he was creating X amount of chances in certain positions of the pitch where we like to play. And we were like, if you transferred him playing the way we want to play, that works for us. Same with Pukki. You know, we were looking at the type of chances that Pukki was getting and thinking, we create a lot of them chances. So if he can make the similar type of runs here and we can continue creating them chances, the stats are telling us it's going to work in simple terms. Again, it doesn't always work like that, as we know, but it's about understanding exactly what you look for and then trying to marry up what someone's doing somewhere else and thinking, right, yeah, he's doing it there. That's what we do. Now let's see if we can make it work in that state. Obviously, and then the higher level you get, it's tougher. You know, we're now trying to do a league with players, which is obviously a lot tougher than in the Championship.
Stuart, you touched on it there a little bit when you were talking about the right back, and obviously you at Norwich have two of the best young fullbacks in the league, of course in Max Aarons and Jamal Lewis. And we recently saw that rags to riches story, as Dej would like to say, of Sam McCallum, who obviously went from non-league to Premier League in 18 months.
Yeah.
And what I want to ask is, because he's I think 19 now.
19, yeah.
Jamal Lewis, who is I think just a few years
21.
older, about 21,
yeah.
right?
21, yeah.
And so, of course, it's a great sign and a great acquisition of a top young player. But when you're making stuff like that, do you ever consider and think about the fact that it could harm the development of one of those players in that their ages are so close to each other? So I use, by comparison, Leicester City as an example, right? Christian Fuchs is in the latter stage of his career, and you've got Ben Chilwell coming through. And so because of the fact that they're both at different ends of their career, it's easier to manage. But if you've got a player like Sam McCallum and Jamal Lewis, who are so close in age and who are going to be competing for the position, does that become a difficult dynamic to manage then in terms of the development of both of those players?
Yeah, good question. It does if you don't really have a plan. So for us, in terms of Sam, do we think Sam's ready to play in the Premier League now? No, we don't, if we're honest. You know, because his rise has been, like you say, drastic. But what he's done, he's had a great season now in League One. Unfortunately, it got curtailed for him. Great that he got promoted, but it would have been good for him to continue playing another 10 games or whatever. But either way, he's had a season there playing good football. Now, it's what we do next with Sam is the key thing. Two things happen here. He comes here and genuinely competes for the shirt, and then its best man wins, and then we have to sell Jamal or whatever. Or it's actually, maybe that's not realistic. Right, he needs to continue his journey elsewhere, continuing to play. And I think for us, the reason we did the Sam one in particular was left backs are very hard to find. Homegrown left backs are even harder to find. So there's like an opportunity in time there. We're also realistic that hopefully Jamal will be here for the rest of his career. As you say, he's performed very, very well in the Premier League so far. So, you know, we're also realistic that it might be difficult, the better he keeps doing. And it's about having a plan that, okay, well, maybe we have the replacement ready. Hopefully we won't have to exercise that. But yeah, it's a good question. But for sure, you know, the Fuchs and Chilwell one, that's like if I'm honest, that's the perfect scenario. You know, we've probably got it now with Pukki and Adam Idah. So Adam Idah's a 19-year-old.
Yeah, hat-trick against Preston, FA Cup.
Yeah. And you've got Pukki, who's, you know, 30, 31 or whatever. And, you know, so it's a bit like that's the perfect one, but it sometimes doesn't work like that. But I think the key is, to your point, is you've got to have a plan. What you can't do is we can't sign Sam and then in 1 year time he's not played any more football because he's been sub here or playing in the 23s, because then he'll go backwards and then he won't be developed. So what we've got to do is make sure that whatever happens next season, he's either really genuinely competing here or he's continuing to play his football. And still in 12 months, he'll only be 20, so he'll still be a really young player.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect segue into another young player at Norwich. You know, this is a prodigious talent. He scored 6 goals this season. You know, he's like the boy next door. He's got that commercial appeal to him. You know, Todd Cantwell. This is a man that's being linked with every man and his dog. You know, those top table clubs, Liverpool, Manchester United, Man City. You know, Newcastle have thrown their hat into the ring as well. How likely do you think it is that he will leave the club this summer? Because if rumours are to be believed, you know, it's sure enough a near thing that he's going to be leaving Norwich Football Club come the end of the season.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful with rumours, because I remember last summer, literally every day there was something on Max Aaron's. That's not even an exaggeration. I think we can count it up at the end. There was something like 238 links between Max Aaron's, and we didn't get one bid. So I think we have to be really careful with the media. I think also we have to be careful of, or these players have to be careful, and the people around them, of not believing they should move too quickly, and not getting not thinking they've outgrown somewhere too quickly. You know, I think if you look at some players like Van Dijk, who's, I'm sure we could probably agree, is the best centre half in the world. Look at his journey though. Groningen, Holland, week. Celtic every week, getting some European exposure. Southampton, Liverpool. It's very, very hard for players to make that step at 2021 to be playing at these top level clubs. Absolutely not impossible, but extremely difficult. And if you don't time that right, if you don't, I remember having a conversation with Michael Emenalo, who's the technical director at Chelsea, and he spoke to me about, we were talking about Eden Hazard. And he says, what people forget is Eden Hazard won the League One, like France League One, Player of the Year 4 times in a row before we signed him. And he goes, I say to our players, no, that's when you're ready to play for Chelsea. And I look at our young players and go, you know what, you've had 1 season in the Premier League. That doesn't mean you're ready to play for Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, Man City, Liverpool, etc., etc. And that's why I think we have to be really careful overhyping these young players too quickly. They've got to earn their right there. You know, we're incredibly proud of how our young players have done, because they've served the club brilliantly, and they're fantastic ambassadors for the club and great people, which is the most important thing. But we have to remember that it's a long career and it's a long journey, and to play it, we've been fortunate this year. We've played Liverpool and Man City and Tottenham and all these, and you look at the level of them players. I remember Trent Alexander when he played here. You're looking at the level of him and you're like, that there's world class. That's world class right there in front of us. And he's performing at the highest level, isn't he, with international and whatever. And I think it's people understanding that next step is very, very difficult, and you've got to be ready for that. You can't just assume that you're ready for it. You can't assume that you score goals in the Premier League, that means you can go and play and take Mo Salah's place, because it's like, whoa, hang on a minute, we're talking about arguably the best player in Europe in the last 2 years here. We're not talking about taking my place in the five-a-side team, So I think it's, we have to remember that, and it's about these young players producing performance consistency. You've alluded to Ben Chilwell. We signed Ben at Huddersfield when he was 18. He come on loan for 12 games, as an 18-year-old, and what a talent. But it's taken him, you know, he's probably up to about 100 games now, and he's probably just become established. He's now getting talked about with maybe if Leicester don't get in the Champions League, he could go to that level. And that's someone who's playing for England's first choice left back. It's a long journey, and probably now if he spoke to Ben, he'd probably go, yeah, I feel ready to be a Champions League player. Well, hopefully that's with Leicester. Not, oh yeah, I could have done it 3 years ago because I've played 20 games in the Premier League. I'm ready now. You know, I think young players have to be really careful. They don't try and go too quick, or the people around them don't think that they can get there too quick. Because
but Stuart, Norwich are in a precarious position. Obviously, you could go down. That's very viable, or you could stay up. Let's say if the worst was to happen, surely you can't blame Todd Cantwell, you know, for knocking on the door and saying, you know what, I see myself as a bona fide Premier League player. I want to move.
No, I'd look at it slightly different, because it's like a player who hasn't performed this year. You know, I don't drag him in the office and go, listen, you just need to leave because you weren't good enough and we got relegated. I think, well, I remember, if we get relegated, all the players that we spoke about today have played their part in that. You know, it's not everyone else's fault. They've played a part in that. You know, if we get relegated, we haven't been good as a collective. So do I believe they should have the ambition to want to continue playing? Absolutely. They should want to play in the Champions League. I want to work in the Champions League. Absolutely. Every single person on our training ground now in this building should have that drive to want to work at the highest possible level. But you've also got to be respectful of that. And you've got to be respectful of what the club's done for you and the opportunity. And of course, we're all realistic. If the money and everything is right, of course, and the level of club is right, of course. Am I the guy who stops a player going to play at a Champions League club? No, because I get it. And if a Champions League club wants you, they will pay whatever money we want.
So Stuart, what's the valuation? What's the valuation for Todd? Because in January he was linked with a lot of top clubs. So what kind of figure would you guys be looking at to even consider?
I think it's hard to put a figure on it, but I think you only have to look at what certain players are being touted for. You know, I think I saw something in the media, BBC gossip column, which I'm sure you will look at first thing in the morning. It's the first thing you do. You don't say hello to the wife, you go, on. Is that right or what?
I look sometimes.
Ruby founded up an agent, Stu.
But no, on that, Jack Grealish was linked to Man United for £75 million. Well, if that's the benchmark, what's Todd done different to Jack Grealish?
So you think they're worth similar prices? So
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's worth
I think Todd's probably worth 35-40 million in this current market. Is that fair? Todd Cantwell.
What do you think Grealish is worth?
50, 60?
60
Why
million.
Is he worth more?
To be honest, I think Grealish is much more seasoned at Premier League level. I think he's
only had this one season, same as Todd. Come on, he played about 5 games in the relegation one.
Yeah, but
I think when you look at it, he's closer to that England level. When you look at Grealish, you're talking Grealish, Maddison, and I still think Todd Cantwell's, he's still young at this Premier League level, but I still think he can get to that level, but he's not there just yet.
Okay.
So that's the price. 70
Say that again.
Jack Grealish's agent on here, is it? I didn't know that.
No, so Stu, moving on. Obviously, it came out in the last, round of testing that it was a Norwich City player that tested positive for COVID-19. Can you share some insight on that, please?
Yeah, so I mean, as you guys are well aware, each week we get tested twice, so the players and staff. And yeah, we got tested on, when was it? The Thursday, and then we get a result on the Friday night. Quite helpful that we'd already played a game and travelled to Tottenham, so it was a bit like, oh, cheers, good to know that after the event. But yeah, so I mean, we just got it. The player in question had no symptoms. He played in the game. He wouldn't have known anything was wrong, and then obviously it came through, so it's a real shock to him and to us, but also probably served as a good wake up of how dangerous this thing is, that someone who genuinely did not feel any different to the day before suddenly gets tested positive for let's be honest, a virus which can kill you. Unfortunately, it's been proven. So I think it's a wake up call of, okay, wow, we're all, in danger here, on something which, we could get at any point. But also, I think what it showed was that also, for our age, it's very hard that it's going to sort of hurt you in our health level. So I think, and hopefully, we're waiting for the next test results. If no one else has gets tested negative off the back of it, hopefully that also shows that our protocols are working well in terms of the social distancing and stuff like that. Because what the biggest disaster now is if suddenly, when we had all the tests again today, when we get the results tomorrow night, if we've suddenly got 10 people test positive for it, then it's like, wow, we've, our protocols are wrong. So in a strange way, it's good that we've had this test to sort of see how our protocols are working. Luckily, the player in question is completely fine. He's 100% nothing, obviously, but nothing wrong with him. He's actually done an independent test with our doctor, which has come back negative.
Wow.
Wow.
Which is confusing. So now he's got to have a third test to see if that comes back negative, and to check if they've, excuse my term, I might get it wrong here, but to check if he's got antibodies or something, which could prove that, oh, you've had it in the past, but don't have it now, or something like that. It's all very scientific, isn't it? But the main thing is he's healthy, and the rest of the group are healthy, and but like I say, it's a good wake up call of how we've done all of these measures, and one of us can still get it. That's quite scary, really.
Wow.
You know what, Stuart? I had a question I wanted to ask in terms of, earlier you mentioned that you, in the whole Buendia deal, for example, you had a conversation with the finance director, and you spoke about everything, and you were both very forthcoming in terms of your position on the transfer. In terms of like working with the finance director and other teams, generally speaking, are you almost assigned a budget relative to the objective of a club? So let's say, for example, at the start of a season, is it almost like, right, in order for us to, let's say, stay in the Premier League, we need to spend roughly around about this much. If we have higher ambitions of, pushing on for, let's say, and trying to, go stake a claim for one of the European positions, we might need to spend a bit more. And does it all like that in terms of the conversations that you have, and the budgets that you're allocated for player recruitment?
No, yes and no. So yeah, in some clubs, yes, definitely. Our club not. So our club's quite unique, really. That we're hang on a minute. Sorry, can you see me? We're self-funded. So it's a big part of my job is to be across exactly where we are financially as a club, in every sort of scenario. So, right, we sell a player for this, for 10 million, we pay tax, etc. Right, what can we go? Okay, that gives us 6 million left. Brilliant. Right, we want to do some work at the training ground, which is going to cost 2 million. Right, we'll save that off. We want to spend 1 million on the academy. So I'm really fortunate that I'm, part of a 3-person exec committee here who has say on all of them sort of key decisions. But basically how we do it, we always work 3 years ahead. And so when we got promoted, we managed to clear a load of debt, pay off the training ground, etc., that we've redone. And we made a conscious decision, rightly or wrongly, to go, right, what we're going to do here is we're not going to really invest in the team. We're going to invest in our assets, so give new contracts to all of our players, especially the young ones, and tie them down for a long time and back them and give them that opportunity to play in the Premier League. And then, but with that, we run the risk of potentially not having a squad strong enough to stay up in the Premier League. But if that doesn't happen, we've safeguarded the club for the next few years. Rather than, we were never going to be able to do a Villa or a Fulham and go and spend 100 million for that money. But what we didn't want to do is get stuck in no man's land of maybe spending 40 million and still getting relegated, because it's like, yeah, but that 40 million isn't enough to guarantee that we're going to stay up. And what we don't have an owner who writes a check. So if we get it wrong, we've got to repair it in-house. And that's what the club had done previously in the Premier League when they signed Naismith and Closer and all these guys for a lot of money.
And Wolfswinkel as well.
And Wolfswinkel, all these sort of ones. And I was like, I sat there and we made this decision, like I say, rightly or wrongly. If we get relegated, people say it was wrong. and I will live for that. But it was like, no, we can't put that club. We don't believe we can put the club in that situation again. So that if we do go down, we're in a real strong position to come back up, because we don't need to sell players. If we do sell a player, we can reinvest that money back in the squad, et cetera, and we can have a go at making sure next time we get back to the Premier League, if we got down, or if we got relegated, that we can be stronger that time. And it's about building it over a period of time, similar to like what Burnley have done. We obviously we play football, but I have huge respect for what Sean Dyche and the guys have done there in terms of they went up. They didn't spend a lot of money. They came down. They went up. They stayed up. And each time they've just grown the club, and they slowly but surely, an amazing training ground. They've done an incredible job there. And they have to, act as an inspiration for a club like us, or Mainz did it in Germany, for example.
So the Premier League returns in the next few days, and obviously there was a lot of rumours emanating that the clubs down the bottom, thought there should be no relegation this season. What's the feeling within the Norwich camp? Are you guys happy to, if you guys possibly go down, would you guys accept relegation?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if it's played out on the pitch. Yeah, I think our biggest gripe was the thought of our season continuing at all costs, just because, for financial reasons, but then maybe the Championship being curtailed and clubs being promoted. It'd be a bit like, well, getting out of the Championship is a 46-game slog, or 49 if you're in the playoffs. We didn't deem it as right that we could play, get relegated, but clubs get promoted. But also, the real key point that people missed is we could be relegated into a league which wouldn't be starting, potentially. Well, why would we vote for that? And also, we could be relegated into a league where teams have all had 6 months off. So we're slogging out a Premier League season, 9 games in 4 weeks, and then, relegated, bang, 2 weeks, you're going to start a new season. Oh, they've all had a 6-month break. Oh, brilliant. Cheers for that. So that was our biggest issue. But at no point have we wanted to curtail the season. We wanted to play because we're bottom league. We want to have the chance to play together, and we're a football club. And football fans. It's like we're here to entertain. Fundamentally, that's what football is. It's an entertainment industry, and we pay people a lot of money to entertain. So it's like we want that. Footballers want to play football. So we wanted to get back and as quickly as possible, because that's what's the point of the world about football? There is, we wouldn't be talking about this, would we? What would we be talking about tonight? TikTok or something. It's like so. Let's be honest, need football back, and we were always desperate for that.
Yeah, so 10 games left of the season. The season resumes on Wednesday. So what's the inside feeling on the camp? Because from the outside looking in, a lot of people have said, oh, Norwich just sort of waved the white flag. They haven't spent money this season. Sort of they're going down. Then it's sort of like, who's the other 2 teams that's going to go down with them? So if you could just give us an insight into the mood, like how are Daniel and the rest of the lads feeling ahead of the resumption of the Premier League?
Yeah, we've got nothing to lose because, like you quite rightly say, everyone's already relegated us. It's the conversation is who's going down with Norwich, not who are going down. And I think that's great for us because we can't actually lose here. Because if we get relegated, everyone's like, yeah, we knew that was happening. So we can go play without any pressure, embrace it. If our Premier League season is going to be the last 9 games and we've got the FA Cup as well, then we may as well go and enjoy it and embrace it and try and win every single game and enjoy it, as opposed to the pressure that some clubs will be under of, if we get beat on Saturday, what does that mean? And I think that's it. And hopefully for us, we've got a lot of young players that we've spoken about. We've got players who this could be the last chance they'll ever have to play in the Premier League. So don't have any regrets. Go and have a good go at it. And like I say, we've got nothing to lose. It's the best league in the world. It's the best jobs in the world. So, let's have a good go. And I think that's very much the sort of the spirit, really. And we can take it game by game, the old cliches and stuff like that. But we have genuinely got nothing to lose. Clubs above us who've got everything to lose. And that's a different pressure. If you're sat there now looking at your fixtures, a little bit scared, a little bit, if we don't win that one, what will that mean? Luckily we don't have that. Luckily we can sit here and go, everyone's written us off. So, no problem. If we get relegated, we plan for relegation. So it's not going to change our club. We don't want it to happen. It'll be upsetting and it'll be annoying and be horrible and whatever. But it's not like it cripples the club, you know. And I think so that hopefully eases a bit of pressure off the boys. And I just want them to go and embrace it and enjoy himself. Regrets whatever happens in the next 6 weeks with the league and the FA Cup. Don't be sat in the summer going, I could have done more, or could have done this, or could have done that. Because, you know, we all know, and I think hopefully this period in time with COVID has proven that, you know, life can be too short, right, for any of us. And it's like, it's too short to have any regrets, or I wish I'd done that, or whatever. So hopefully they'll embrace it, and you know, whatever it is, we'll be proud of them, because, you know, they've done brilliant for this club, every single one of them. So hopefully they can finish this season off in style. And, you know, and Dan talks about create a little miracle, and why not? That's why we all watch the game, right? To see amazing things happen, whether that's Leicester winning.
You saw it against Man City earlier on when you had like 10, 11 injuries, and
exactly, you know, Tottenham away in the FA Cup, you know,
even the win against Leicester just before the break.
That Jamal Lewis
and David Carter, yeah. So Stuart, last question from me. I know a few Norwich fans, and you know, the one thing they tell me that this is a community club. This club is for the community. Obviously, they're not going to be able to watch their team at Carrow Road for a long time. So what is your message to the Norwich faithful?
I think we just need them to give positive energy to us. You know, we need them to invest in this, watching their games at home as they would watching it in the stadium. You know, we need them, you know, we need that feeling around the city when people are walking around of, you know, they still believe in what we're trying to do and what the team's trying to do, because we need that. And we need them to stop off social media and don't criticize people or whatever, you know, just sort of, come on, let's have 5 weeks of sticking together and trying to create a little miracle, and then we can dissect it after the event. That's the time to dissect it. But yeah, we need to be behind them. But it's gotten, to be honest, that we're playing football without the fans, because almost what is the point?
Yeah, it makes me weep internally.
Honestly, it's like,
yeah. So Stuart, we want to, you know, round off this interview talking about you. Your last recent jobs, you've had 2 to 3 years. You've been at Norwich for around 2 to 3 years.
3 years,
you know, yeah, 3 years. So, you know, a lot of big clubs, if rumours are to be believed, have been knocking on the door. I've seen you've been linked to that role at Manchester United. You've also famously said you want to work abroad. So in the next 12 to 18 months, where do you see your future? Is it still at Norwich? Have you got a job to complete? Or do you think, you know what, I've done my job. I've reshaped, you know, the philosophy of this team, and now it's time for me to move on to Panu?
No, I mean, listen, for sure I'll be here for the next 2 years, because that's the length for my contract, unless I get sacked. But that's the length for my contract. And I've committed to that, to the owners and the board, and I'm a man of my word. So I'll do that. And then, yeah, I've said it countless times on record. I want to work abroad. You know, I want to go, and it comes back to that diversity piece we touched on earlier. You know, I need to go and experience different cultures. I need to go and see how different cultures think about the game. And
is that Spain, Italy, or any countries?
Spain and Italy would be my two choices. Spain would be my first choice for sure. And I'm learning the language at the minute, working hard on that, because, you know, I want to, if I do get the opportunity, and if I'm fortunate enough to get the opportunity, I want to, like, not have any regrets. I want to embrace it and be the best I can be at it. But yeah, I've still got, you know, I'm only 36, so I've got so much I need to learn. And that's why I want to do that. You know, it's not going to Spain with any level of arrogance of expecting a big job, because I don't. It's going out there to become a better at what I do, and you know, one day maybe, if I'm fortunate to come back to this country and get a different job, you know, I've got some more skills in my toolkit, for want of a better phrase, because yeah, I need that. You know, I'm young and I've got a lot to learn, and I've got a lot of developing to do. But, you know, I really want to go and try and do that in a different culture, in a different, you know, different world, really.
This has been brilliant. This has been a clinic of insight into your role. And again, as a podcast, this is what we want to do. We want to provide different insights. We've had managers, ex-players, legends, and I think it's important for our platform to have people like you to come and give us your insight into, you know, your role, which is what you've done perfectly today. Honestly. So we can only thank you for that.
Thank you, Stuart.
Really appreciate it, Stuart, and really just appreciate how open and honest you've been in the time that we've been speaking. It's just been great to hear you speak about your experiences at various different clubs, and of course what your ambitions are for the future.
We actually planned for 45 minutes. Yeah, but when we're all talking about football, that's how quick time goes. Thank you, Stuart.
This is it, honestly. And of course, once the Premier League resumes, we'll all be sort of waiting in bated breath for the end of the season, in hopes for a miracle for Norwich. So you know, wishing you all the best for the rest of the season. And of course, we're gonna end it there. So just want to say a thank you to all of you listeners and viewers for tuning in up until this point. A quick reminder before we sign off: if you're not yet following us on this at podcast_TVG, on Instagram at pod_TVG. You can subscribe to YouTube to watch our content. It's the Beautiful Game Podcast, and listen to our content on Spotify, but also on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts as well. And if you're listening in on Apple Podcasts, please make sure you leave a 5-star review. Until the next episode, over and out.
Peace.